Microphone check, 1, 2, what is this? It's the 5'7" assassin in the podcast business. I am your host, Rohan Patra, the rap music plug at your service.
Here we are again at the end of a rainbow.
The Rap Music Plug podcast presented by QLC TV is the remedy to the I don't have anything good to listen to problem. Through in-depth album and song reviews, as well as artist interviews and general rap commentary sprinkled in between on all of what the mainstream and underground rap scenes have to offer, this is your one-stop shop to knowing what to add to your queue, play next, or pop into your record player. Welcome to the show. Being comfortable is something that, on its surface, is a plainly good thing. Anyone would want to be comfortable, right? Well, when it comes to developing yourself as a person, as a professional in whatever line of work you're in, or as an artist trying to create music, too much comfortability can lead to this lack of inspiration or stagnation. This was a dynamic that I think had been plaguing Mick Jenkins for the better part of the last 5 years. Mick Jenkins is an artist that I've been a big fan of ever since his breakout mixtape, The Waters. Dropping in 2014, he had already a very refined artistry so early in his career that really blew me away. He was a skilled lyricist who often delved into very meaningful subject matter, had a good ear for beats, and could sing on top of that and put together full-blown songs that satisfied on multiple levels. Mick really was the total package, and someone I thought was primed to be a true star, bringing a similar, wholesome, and accessible sound that his fellow Chicago brethren Chance the Rapper blew up off of. But since that impressive tape that dropped in 2014, Mick's career never really took off in the way that I expected it to. His follow-up, THC, The Healing Component, in 2016, was an overblown, overly serious, and heavy-handed exploration into the meaning of love and God as well. Unlike most people, though, who generally were pretty mixed and unimpressed, I really did love the production. That was a great mix of glitch hop, trap, jazz, neo-soul, with some just genuinely beautiful musical moments like Strange Love, the track with No Name I'm remembering. The mix of instrumentation was really impressive and something that I hadn't really heard much of and really haven't heard much of since. And I also loved a lot of the lyrical moments from Mick. But I had to agree, though, with that main gripe that the album was a little long and didn't deliver this real nuanced lyrical content that its presentation and theme required. After THC, there was then a string of solid but not incredibly impressive mixtapes that stayed in this somewhat glitchy left field-ish jazz trap infused rap, and Mick really started to get a lot more low-key and laid back in his rhymes. Mick then sort of went in another direction, though, with his 2018 Pieces of a Man, which stuck closely to a more traditional jazz rap sound that was good but felt way too comfortable for my liking. And then finally, after the Circus, that was a short project EP of sorts that didn't make much of an impression on me. His next true full-length Elephant in the Room came in 2021, where we are today, and I honestly was a bit skeptical how this would sound after many years now of not really being all that impressed of an artist that I was really had high hopes for. And I think this sees Mick still remain comfortable, but instead of it being a negative, I think on Elephant in the Room, it was a positive. Lyrically, Mick delves into topics surrounding racism in America, self-love, and some cool and calm flexing that he is just so good at this point. These are all familiar territories for him, but the biggest shift was that we see Mick get less weighty and ambitious in the thematic scope of this record that was a key feature of his last projects. And I think this was a good move because Mick is a little less distracted now by trying to stick to a concept and make the songs fit, and instead sounds more free and less forced on this record. This enhanced sense of freedom in Mick's performance makes the moments where the urgency and intensity do increase, makes it feel that much more impactful. DUI is a highlight in this vein with a tense, chilling, eerie cool to it, featuring a dope feature from our boy Green Slime. Interviewed him about a month or two ago, I feel, something like that. And he absolutely shined in this really big placement for him, so I'm really excited. And Mick comes in and definitely holds his own. Definitely one of the better tracks on this record. And then my favorite track, Reflection. It is so good. Mick on this track beautifully articulates the self-hatred and allergy to love many people and men in particular have. It features an incredible hook that shows this sad reality that weak people can't really face themselves and look themselves in the mirror, and also has some excellent lines like, "He only hears with his ears, we talk with more than our lips," or "calculating the trauma to iterate it on wax." I just really love how Mick can be so poignant, yet so lyrically clever and precise in his raps. He's just genuinely one of the best lyricists that we have in the game right now. All in all, there really is no slouch verse on this entire album. Mick is very focused and on point at all times. Although I wasn't a huge fan of Mick's The Circus record, I think he really learned something from creating that record because it showed him how to be concise. This album, Elephant in the Room, doesn't overstay its welcome. The songs are refined as hell with no wasted space, showing his most finely tuned blend of melodic, soul singing, and rapping. There's a great seamless flow to this album that is accentuated by the wonderful smoothness in the melodies and hooks. There's no better slice of melodic greatness than Gucci Tried to Tell Me here. Wow, like that Lost in the Sauce refrain is so goddamn catchy, with a Randy Moss reference that I definitely appreciate as a football fan as well. These hooks are so well put together, even by Mick's standards, which are high, because that was always one of his key strengths in his artistic arsenal. But there are also some hooks here that are so clean, but genuinely sound difficult to have pulled off, that Mick absolutely kills. On Is This Cigarettes, it features this amazingly intoxicating hook that sees Mick hit some beautifully high notes, shows his vocal control and range to weave that all into a rapping verse with no awkwardness. Another very impressive hook is on Scottie Pippen, seeing Mick's very vulnerable singing just come off so entrancing and blends in with the guitar-driven beat in a really nice way. The sound palette of this album is not unfamiliar territory for Mick Jenkins. It lives in that synthetic, jazzy, airy, neo-soul inspired world of hip-hop that he's been working in for years. That being said, there is a sameness in this very smooth production that does make the album lose some steam for me at times and comes off a bit edgeless or a bit too listless for my liking. Beats like on Truffles is just kind of dry to me. Same can be said for Contacts and Stiff Arm that just don't kick the album off on the best of notes, and generally just shows how hook and songwriting dependent this album is, because when the hooks aren't at their absolute best like they are on other tracks, the album does falter pretty significantly. Luckily, after this initial string of mediocre tracks, the rest of the album doesn't really miss a beat. Overall though, this very consistent, samey production is a good stylistic fit for Mick's deep, effortlessly clear raps and singing. The silky smooth, melodic moments on this record don't fully offset this negative sameness, but it does get pretty close. There's also a nice change of pace that I want to point out on the final track, with a sweet Serpent with Feet feature that was a nice, tasteful touch. It's very soulful and a confident way to end the album. It feels triumphant, but not in your face about it or cocky. It's really Mick at his best, where he's quietly confident, self-assured, and all of his rhymes and his statements come through crystal clear. At its fundamental level, Mick is comfortable on Elephant in the Room. But what was a bit of a drawback on previous projects like Pieces of a Man, where I just don't feel like he pushed himself enough stylistically, on Elephant in the Room, he keeps certain elements like the production familiar while giving himself the room to be more natural, less forced. And I think it works out for the best. While this is not a record that reaches the highs of THC or the consistent high watermark of The Waters, pun intended, Elephant in the Room is an album that manages to say more and do more with less. If Mick can just find a way to marry this more looser approach with just a bit more musical experimentation, I believe he still has the potential to deliver that truly classic album that I've always felt like he's been capable of. I feel like this is still a notch below The Waters, but it is easily the best thing Mick has created in probably the last half decade plus, or definitely the last half decade plus. So I give Mick Jenkins' Elephant in the Room a high 7 on 10. So there we have it, another episode of the Rap Music Plug podcast presented by QLC TV. I hope this episode gave you some new perspectives and insights into what the greatest art form known to man in hip-hop music has to offer. If you want to support the show in the most meaningful way possible, it would be my absolute honor to have you as a patron in the new Rap Music Plug podcast Patreon. Through this Patreon, you will be getting exclusive content such as bonus episodes, exclusive album recommendations, exclusive playlists, early access to episodes, and more. And above all, though, you will be able to support the show directly in a way that will not only justify the crazy amount of time I spend on this show already, but allow me to cover some of the expenses related to supporting all of these great artists that we cover on the show through the website, and will allow us to sustain and build on this amazing growth that the RMPP has experienced recently. Big shout out to Levy, Mahima, Jeff, Fatman Toom, and Khalid for your generous support through the Patreon. I really appreciate it. So if you have any questions about any of the Patreon stuff, or just want to keep tabs on the show, interact with me on rap music and all the great stuff that we can talk about, follow me on Twitter and Instagram at rapmusicplugpod, or shoot me an email at qlctv.podcast@gmail.com. You can also rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts and subscribe on YouTube and Spotify as well. But that's enough self-promotion for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Peace.